If you've thought we've gotten nerdy before, hold on to your keyboards and mice because we're going deep into technical specifics for the leading attribution platforms in this series. Welcome back to another episode of Attribution Nation podcast. We are wrapping up our fourth mini-series, which is where we discussed kind of how to be successful with different multi-touch attribution platforms with people that have worked in the platforms for years and years and years. And I am joined today by my good friend, Ragen Dodson. Now, before we talk about Ragen and introduce you to Ragen, I do want to just, do a little housekeeping. Y'all are used to Andrea Lechner-Becker being my co-host for the mini-series wrap-up. Well, Andrea has decided that she wants to do different things, and so she is no longer going to be a part of the podcast. We're going to miss her, and we thank her for all of her contributions to this date, and obviously wish her the best of luck in her next endeavor. Andrea's great. We're still good friends. But now we have a new person here, Ragen. So Ragen and I go back, a couple of years now. It's a little over 2 years. Ragen was one of the very first customers of Attributa when we first started. And since then, Ragen and I have just become good friends. She is incredibly knowledgeable on all things marketing attribution, marketing operations, and even other aspects of marketing, future CMO in the making potentially here. So I just want to welcome Ragen to the podcast. Ragen, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Drew. Yes, we go way back, and I'm so grateful to be here with you on this podcast. Amazing one. So I'm Ragen again, and I started out my marketing career doing some marketing program management that led into marketing operations before marketing operations was a thing. And I've just been evolving from there. I've always had aspirations, like Drew said, to be a CMO. So I'm trying to learn all the facets of marketing. And with that being said, I combine a modern demand generation approach with marketing operations to utilize both parts of my brain, which is that creative on one side and then the technical aspect on the other. Yeah, that's a little bit about me, and really happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining again. And so what we do in these recap episodes is we talk a little bit about some of our key takeaways and key learnings from the other episodes in the series. A little bit of almost like a Cliff's Notes. If you want to skip the entire series, you can come to this one and get the good stuff, right? So what we're going to start with is, I think there were kind of three big takeaways that I saw, and I'd like to discuss those with you, Ragen. And the first one was really about consistent, clean, and simple. James talked about it. Kate talked about it. Nick talked about it. Stefan talked about it. We want to keep things consistent, clean, and simple when it comes to how we structure our data and how we structure our reports. So, Ragen, did you get that same message from the group as well? And what are your thoughts on that?
I did. It was a theme throughout all of the episodes, which I'm really happy that we are starting to all come together and realize that, especially in the marketing operations realm. But I've noticed in my career as well, the last couple of years actually, that simplicity is so much better. And not only that, but it's going to allow you to streamline your processes. And that's another theme that I found throughout all of these episodes. So really happy that everyone hit on this.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've seen a lot of is I've seen a lot of organizations try to over-engineer things and make things more complex than they really need to be. And I think that one of our key principles that me and my team espouse and work to uphold is that complexity is fine if it's necessary.
Right.
But introducing complexity just for complexity's sake is just, it's going to make things difficult. It creates more failure points. When you have complex things, it makes it difficult to maintain and monitor those things. And so I think that keep it simple. Just keep it simple as much as possible.
Yeah. Why do you think complexity is added?
I have two answers. One of them is political and the other one's a little less political. I think that the political answer is complexity is added because organizations want to have things that feel big. They want to have things that feel important. They want to have things that feel like we're innovating, right? Simple is rarely considered to be innovative.
Yep.
So whereas complex is. And so that's kind of like a desire for organizations. That's actually the political answer. The non-political answer is because every organization thinks they're a special snowflake, when in reality they have 90% in common with the other orgs in their industries and even in other industries, and they have maybe 10% that makes them unique. And so I think that organizations think that they are so unique that they need big, complex things, when in reality, they're just not that unique.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. And that's exactly what I was going to say. It's a lot of politics and that. And I think that, to your point, marketing operations too is guilty of overcomplicating things. And when you do that, it's really hard to break it down for stakeholders and they get even more confused. So having that simplistic approach is so much better for the entire organization to get on board with whatever you're working on or whatever you're doing, especially when it comes to attribution. We know how complicated that can be. So definitely love this series and how we're breaking down and saying, hey, simple is better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, the next one that was a big takeaway for me was that really tools are great to have and everybody needs these tools, but where you really add value and where these tools start showing return on the investment is when you deploy them, and in this case, the data created by them, to achieve strategic goals in the organization. So, Ragen, tell me a little bit about how you have seen organizations deploy tools and data to achieve strategic goals.
Yeah. So the first thing too, I will note what I see is everyone starts out and they just get all the tools out there, all the popular tools, and they add them to the tech stack because they're like, oh, it's going to solve this problem. It's going to solve this problem. And then they don't have marketing operations support or someone that's technically savvy to come in and integrate all of these different platforms. And so they're in tremendous tech debt. So that's what I see. When we come in at Refine Labs and, assess the tech debt, we're like, you're not even all this tech, all these tools are sitting off on the shelf. What are you doing? And then they're like, well, how do we simplify it? And I think when you start there and you simplify, you're like, okay, now I can zoom out and see how each of these tools will work. And that's really when you start unlocking strategy, is when you simplify the tech stack that you have in marketing. Because then you're going to be able to put use to it. And then you find the different use cases that work for each facet of marketing. And then marketing operations will be able to say, okay, I am only dealing with a few different tools and I know what each of these do for each part of marketing. And then you're going to, have documentation around how all of these tools support the overall marketing objectives that roll up to your business objectives. And then the stakeholders, especially your counterparts in finance, be like, oh, okay, well, we only have a few tools. Marketing is not over investing in tools. And, we can trust them as our strategic partner here. Again, going back to that simple is better. That's how I see that you're unlocking strategy with your tools.
Yeah, I love that. I love that the idea of consolidating down to just the most necessary tech that we need. I've seen marketers for years have shiny object syndrome, where they go buy the latest and greatest new cool tool because all the cool kids are buying it and using it. And I want to get on LinkedIn and talk about how I'm using the new hot tool. And then we don't even have a strategy to deploy that thing.
Yes.
And we're building strategy to fit the tool as opposed to buying tools to fit the strategy. And I think that creates a lot of challenges with how you deploy a tool in a strategic manner in a way that's actually achieving business goals. So yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly on that.
Yeah, 100%.
How do you, so Ragen, you deal with this a lot. How do you coach marketers not to have shiny object syndrome?
That is a really, really good question. I think that one of the main things that I bring up is like, going back to how does this roll up to the overall marketing and business objectives? Why do you want this tool? It's cool that you're being targeted with these cool like videos on LinkedIn and you want to join the bandwagon like you said, Drew. But how does this roll up to our different business objectives? How does this roll into the budget? Did you bring in your business operations or CRM analyst along for the ride to procure this tool? What did they say about this integrating in with HubSpot and Salesforce? Because that's an undertaking that might take a long time. Another thing is like all these new shiny objects and these new tools that are coming out, they're just getting started. So do they, like based on the growth stage that the company is at, do you have the resources? Do we have the resources to take on this undertaking? So starting to think of that big picture. Sometimes it's not just a plug and chug. And another thing is like, have we even started or have we done any of this, these processes that this tool will take away? Have we done it manually? What is the current process for it? And if they can't answer that, then I'm like, why do we need a tool for it if we don't even know what use cases that we need out of it? So really breaking down and having them start to think about, is this really going to add value or is this just going to add more money to our tech debt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that you called out resources because it's a perfect segue into the next big takeaway that I had from the series. So we asked all the guests, what does it take to maintain a multi-touch attribution platform? Because there's a lot of concerns about, hey, is this going to be like a huge, massive thing for us to maintain? And people are concerned about having the resources available to maintain it. And what I think was a pretty common theme among the guests is that it really doesn't take much more to maintain than you're already doing with your marketing automation system and or your CRM. The lift above and beyond that is not that big. It's because you're already doing a lot of the maintenance anyway. Like when you're on a multi-touch attribution platform, one of the critical things you have to do to maintain it is when we onboard a new marketing tactic, we have to take a moment to say, hey, how is our multi-touch attribution platform going to track this? Well, you already have to do that for your marketing automation platform, whether you're on Marketo or HubSpot or one of the others. You already have to do that. In your CRM, you've already had to think through your campaign strategy in the CRM. So all you're doing is just adding a third system that you have to pay attention to through what is a pretty normal process. So when we talk about resourcing, what have you seen in regards to maintenance and resourcing for multi-touch attribution platforms?
First, what I see all the time is that it's non-existent. To start there, a lot of companies that I've dealt with, they again just let visible set on like a visible set on the shelf, and I'm like, okay, can I use this data if I'm doing an analysis for them in their CRM? No, we don't use visible, but you're paying for it. And so that's number one. Number two, thinking back to when I've led marketing operations teams, it's like, okay, well, we're going to get a Drew first to help us like set this thing up and create repeatable processes and educate stakeholders on what it's going to take from their end to make sure that this system is maintained as well. You need to be communicating with your operations teams whenever you're doing X, Y, and Z. You have to have naming conventions. You have to have all of the processes outside of the attribution system set up, and you need to bring your marketing operations counterpart in so that they can help you with that. Because they hold the knowledge, they know how the system is set up on the back end. You can't just go launching campaigns without following the procedures that have been set now that we have this multi-touch attribution system involved. So I think that that's what I see with it working and not just sitting on the shelf is when your marketing operations team is running the show and you're looping them in, the rest of marketing, to make sure that you're following these processes and protocols that are going to make the attribution system work efficiently.
Yeah, I think we've encountered a lot of orgs that a marketing attribution system ends up being shelfware, where it just sits there for 4 years and nobody's touched it for 4 years, and then it's broken. Well, yeah, I mean, anything's going to be broken if you don't use it for 4 years and try to turn it on. Like, everything's going to be broken. So we see a lot of that as well. It's a shame because, I mean, these organizations are paying money for these tools and then not getting any value out of them because they're just sitting there. The other piece of that puzzle that I think is important to understand is the maintenance related to the data. So, because we're obviously talking about the tool itself, but then there's the data that the tool creates, which is really the outcome of the tool. You have the tool for the data. So how have you seen organizations be successful in maintaining the data itself? Not like the processes, the operational side of things, but maintaining the data.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, just to be a bearer of bad news, no one is maintaining their data, which is sad. I don't understand that. I think it's, a waste of good, valuable data, but it goes back to not investing in marketing operations. But I think the organizations that I do see doing this really well is just that they have those upfront processes that say, and they're collaborating with the business systems and the business intelligence teams too. If your org's big enough to have those to understand what the back end, your data warehouses look like, how they're cleaning the data. And then you just have a huge comprehension of Salesforce and HubSpot or all your other tools. Those have to be cleaned up front. So the organizations that I see do well with this, they have someone that's owning HubSpot, someone that's owning Salesforce, the back end data cleanliness. You've invested in a data warehouse. Not all growth stage companies have this. So it might be a little manual at first if you can't afford like a Snowflake data warehouse or things of that nature. But now you have AI to kind of help you figure out what that process looks like. There's layers to it. And the organizations that I see do really well at this, they have owners for these particular systems and processes.
Oh, ownership. I know that was one of your big takeaways outside of the three that we talked about was around ownership. So I think this is a great segue to jump into, Ragen, some of your light bulb moments, as you called them, and just some of your other key takeaways. So let's talk about your takeaway around ownership.
Yes. The light bulb moment that I had was when you and Kate were talking about if everyone owns it, no one owns it. That was like huge for me because I've been trying to find the words to describe that. I see that folks have a lot of folks, especially in growth stage orgs, everyone's hands are in the pot. And then as you start growing, you want to keep your hands in it, but then you have the resources to hire like a MOPS person or a specialist to come in to take ownership, but you still want your hands in the pot. And it doesn't work like that. You got to release the ownership sometimes to someone that's, you're hiring a marketing operations professional, allow them to take ownership of it. It doesn't work. I love how you and Kate touched on that. It doesn't work when everyone owns it because you're having different perspectives, different points of view on how the system or process is supposed to work. And then it becomes political.
Yeah. Nobody wants politics involved in tech and data. I think for me, when I think of the concept of everybody owns it, nobody owns it, I think of the Spider-Man meme where you've got the three people dressed as Spider-Man and they're all pointing at one another. And it's like, okay, well, who owns this thing?
Yeah.
You do. You're pointing at me. I'm pointing at you. Like, we all own it. So nobody actually owns it. Yeah. So I think that's the meme I always think of when I think of that concept.
That's true. And I think too that some folks and orgs like that everyone owns it because if something breaks, they don't want to take the accountability for it breaking.
Accountability is a big one. I think there's a big difference between people that are in the performance of people that are afraid of accountability and people that love accountability. Yeah, there's a lot of people that don't want to be accountable for things. And that's a lot of the reason why you end up with these scenarios of if everybody owns it, no one owns it.
Yep, 100%. Ownership is okay. It's a good thing to own something.
Absolutely. Ownership should be the goal for people. because the more you own things, the more you get to claim credit for their success, quite frankly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is how you become a strategic part of the equation, is when you start owning things, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
that.
All right. So Ragen, what are some of your other light bulb moments that you caught on to when you listened to these episodes?
Yeah. So another light bulb moment would be realizing that it's not enough to just use the tools available to us. Like, you have to apply them strategically to drive actual business outcomes. We know that the tools are powerful, but the magic is really going to happen when we align them with clear goals and strategies. So loved that part. That was actually under Kate. I loved the episode with Kate. I think another thing too is that with James, another light bulb moment that kind of adds on to that is that, recognizing how these expertise and technologies can be translated into more strategic front-facing roles in marketing. I think all the light bulb moments connect back to, how do we make these tools less tactical and more strategic?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that I always go back to my CEO when I worked at Lead MD, Justin Gray. Shout out to Justin Gray. He always had this phrase that he used about marketing, that for a lot of organizations, marketing is considered nothing more than the arts and crafts department. And that in a lot of B2B organizations, marketing isn't taken seriously.
Nope.
And marketers and CMOs have always wanted a way to be taken seriously and to get a seat at the table where we're talking about big strategic business level goals. And I feel like that getting your reporting and analysis in a state where it's trustworthy and defensible and you can share it outside of the marketing organization, I think that's one of the ways that marketers and CMOs get a seat at that table, at that strategic table, is by up-leveling their conversations of their reporting conversations from clicks and engagement and stuff like that to actual financial calculations, like what did we drive for the business in terms of pipeline and revenue. And I think that not only does that give the CMO access to that seat at that table that they want to get to, but also the other folks in the department. When you are a marketer that starts thinking in terms of how are we generating pipeline and how are we influencing, sales, you're just going to be better at your job.
Yeah.
You just are. And others in the organization are going to take you more seriously. It's one of the reasons why, and I think that this is a completely wrong viewpoint of this. So I don't agree with this, but a lot of people still think of social media managers as just like interns, right? Oh, we got the intern doing social media.
Yep.
And it's because so much of social media comes down to like, oh, we got engagement because we sent out this meme. And it's like, okay, that's not how you get taken seriously in an organization. So I think that for marketers to get taken seriously, it's the language that they speak. And if you speak a language that is aligned with the strategic goals of the business, people will take you more seriously and you will just generally be more successful in your career.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I 100% agree with that. I think that is so true. And we get stuck on these vanity metrics and just things that are, come on, like it's good from like a program level to, to look at these small micro KPIs and making sure that the small or large initiatives that you're doing move the needle. But at the end of the day, it's so important to be speaking the language that the bigwigs of the organization care about. It's so important to tie that into the bigger picture. So I totally agree with you on that.
Cool. Awesome. What were some of your other light bulb moments that you want to talk about?
Yes. So is it Stefan?
Stefan, yeah.
Stefan from Dream Data. Loved his segment. A light bulb moment for me, and is collaboration amongst the folks inside of like leaders in your organization and outside of your organization. This is going to accelerate progress, and especially in a dynamic space such as attribution, So we see so many different attribution companies emerging, which definitely would love your thoughts on that, Drew. These are like the shiny new objects that I'm seeing that folks are like, oh, we got like forget visible. Let's get, like a hockey stack or a dream data, which I love the products, by the way. So just saying. But what I'm saying to you is if you can't make a visible work, why would a hockey stack or dream data or whatever work? Because it's a shiny new object. So I think it's imperative that you're getting out there and you're talking with folks that are using these products, or maybe not using the products, collaborating with them, join like an Attributa, community to really gather insights on what's working, what are the different use cases, what should I do that's going to fit my organization correctly. So I really loved his note about, collaboration there.
Yeah, so I have a couple of responses to that. So number one, you mentioned a lot of new attribution platforms, and there's been a ton of them being released over the last 4 years. I mean, in the last 4 years, you've had Hockey Stack come out, you've got RevSure, you've got Infinigro, you've got I just found out about Channel 99, which just launched like within the last few months.
Wow.
And there's all these attribution platforms out there. And I think, up until about like 2019, you really had Full Circle and Visible, and that was it. You had BrightFunnel, and then BrightFunnel was bought by Terminus. And so then there was still just like Full Circle and Visible. And then, now you've got tons of options. I think the reason why there's so many is because this is a fundamental challenge that every marketer faces.
Yeah.
Every marketer faces the challenge of how do I show the value of my work and how do I use that data to do better work? That's just generally speaking how marketers have this challenge that has turned into all these new software platforms. Now, one of the things that you mentioned there as well that I want to just talk about is you mentioned like, well, if you're not successful with Visible, how are you going to be successful with Hockey Stack or Dream Data? And I think that's a great question, because one of the things that is, in this series, we've talked to folks from Marketo Measure that work on Marketo Measure, formerly known as Visible, of course. We've talked to Caliber Mind, we've talked to Dream Data, and if you listen to the series, you will find that these tools are very, very, very similar in how they work and what they do. There's differences, of course, but the fundamentals and the foundational layer is all extremely similar. And so if I'm not successful with Marketo Measure, Visible, it's going to be really difficult for me to be successful with Dream Data or Caliber Mind or Hockey Stack or any of the other ones out there, because most likely, if I'm getting the fundamentals wrong with Marketo Measure, I'm going to get the exact same fundamentals wrong with the other platforms.
Yep.
And so I think that the funny thing is, I think this is the same thing for like most marketing technology, though, because you see the same thing with like 6sense, Demandbase, and Terminus. How many orgs on board with Terminus and they're like, oh, we're not successful, we're going to go switch over to Demandbase, and then they're on Demandbase and they're like, we're not successful with Demandbase, we're going to switch to 6sense. 6sense is going to solve all these problems, and then they're still not successful with 6sense again. It's most of the time it's not the tool, it's the way the tool is being used. And so if you're not successful with one, it's going to be very difficult to be successful with one of their competitors that is foundationally
the same,
very similar, if not the same. So it's something that I think that marketers, when you run into that scenario that the tool's not working, your first step shouldn't be, let's go find another tool. Your first step should be, why are we not successful with this tool?
Yep.
A little self-reflection would be good.
It boils down to the fundamentals.
It does.
Yep. The enablement piece, you've probably not established a foundation, before you've onboarded these tools. I remember when you and I worked together at a previous organization, when we were implementing Marketo Measure, Visible, there were so many underlying issues that we found with all the processes from the go-to-market. It was uncovered. And I always tell people, be prepared for that when you're onboarding a new tool, you're going to find so many things that have been swept under the rug or that are broken that you're going to have to fix for this system to work the way that it should. And so it really boils down to fundamentals all within all the go-to-market, how you're cleaning your data, how you're intaking your data, integrations. You have to make sure that all of that is squeaky clean before the attribution system is going to work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You also mentioned joining a community. It's funny you mentioned that. If you're listening to this, this was not a planned or prepared thing. Ragen is not being compensated for this in any way, shape, or form. We actually do have a community. It's called Attribution Nation, same name as the podcast. And we're actually in the process of, we're recording this on December 19th. So by the time you're listening to this, this will probably already be done. But we're in the process of moving that community from a LinkedIn group over to a Slack group, because the LinkedIn group functionality just sucks. Sorry,
Yeah,
it's not very good. Nobody sees anything that's happening in there because the algorithm doesn't surface it. So we're moving into a Slack group. So it's free to join if anybody wants to join. We don't spam you if you join. It's just supposed to be like practitioners of marketing attribution, helping other practitioners of marketing attribution be successful. Good little shout out there. Appreciate you. Appreciate that, Ragen. Now, I think you had another one that you wanted to share as well that was high on your list. We've got a document open with our notes, and you're highlighting a few here. So what was another one of the key takeaways that you want to share here?
Oh, man, so many key takeaways from these amazing experts. I really enjoyed all these episodes. I'm just going to give a quick shout out to all of these folks that come on. Definitely go back and listen to the full episodes just because they are so informative. But another key takeaway light bulb moment is that bridging the gap between behind the scenes expertise and front stage strategy. That was from James's podcast episode. I think that's so important because a lot of the times, especially, in the marketing ops realm, we just want to be behind the scenes. When I was doing marketing ops full time, it's just like, early in my career, I'm just like, I don't want to deal with the big wigs. I don't want to deal with the CMO. I just want to stay behind the scenes and hide behind everything that's going on in the tech world. And I think that to stop the attribution debate as you roll up to the CMO, the CRO, the CEO, is that you need to be center stage, especially when you're onboarding a new tool such as an attribution system. Bring people along for the ride. Ask them, go on a listening tour. I say this in probably almost all the podcasts that I'm on. Listening tours with all of the C-suite and the marketing leaders that are going to be using this system is so important. Ask them, what are the questions that you need answered when we implement this tool, when we have more data? And I think doing that instead of just, we got a new shiny object tool because the demand gen leader wants to prove ROI to the C-suite. It's not just demand gen that's going to be using this. It's going to be it should be the entire organization that's going to find this tool valuable. And so I think that when you're bridging the gap between what you're doing behind the scenes and bringing that to the front stage and taking people along for the ride with that enablement approach is going to make sure that your attribution system or whatever tool that you're procuring and implementing is understood, and there's no debate.
Yeah, I love the idea of a listening tour. That is such a really smart idea. And I think it also points to another thing that I know you had listed as one of your takeaways was that these tools can actually create alignment across organizations, across departments within organizations. And so I think how do you view these listening tours as connecting to organizational alignment?
Yeah, I think that the listening tours, which, if you're starting fresh new as a leader in an organization, you should be doing this. Even if you're, a specialist, you should be doing this. But it shows that you care. It shows that you care about the connected success between all teams in the go-to-market function. And it shows like, hey, like I might be the new kid on the block, or I might be wanting to revamp X, Y, and Z process. I want to make sure that you feel comfortable with whatever that I'm doing in the tech in the MarTech space. I think that it's also important, with the tech, that like just show them what use cases that will benefit them. Like, hey, this might be deemed as a marketing technology, but finance, when we're thinking of like Uptempo or like an Allocadia, hey, finance, you can actually get in here and you can see the marketing budget in real time. Did you know that? Right? I think that it's so important to teach other folks outside of marketing how that they can benefit from the technology. And that's that alignment that you spoke about.
Awesome. I love that idea, because everybody in the organization, not everybody, but most people in the organization have a vested interest in what marketing's doing, because marketing in a lot of ways can be, the tip of the spear as it relates to how we engage with our buyers, right? And finance has a vested interest because they're the ones providing the budget. Sales has a vested interest because sales is the one that gets, the marketing leads, right? Business development for the same reason, customer success, account management. Marketing can influence all these different functions in the organization. And so the kind of olive branch and reaching out to them and saying, hey, how can our multi-touch attribution platform help you? And what are some of the goals that you would get out of this? I think that's just a great way to get people on the same page. And then also to make sure that, to your earlier point, that we are using the tool to drive, strategic initiatives.
Yeah.
The BDR team might have a strategic goal of, increasing call demo to opportunity conversion rates from 10% to 25%. Well, how are we going to do that? And how can marketing in an MTA platform potentially help us achieve that goal? So I think that there can be a lot of organizational alignment that's created by a lot of these things.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think one of the most satisfactory moments in my career was when we implemented Visible, or Marketo Measure. I still call it Visible. It's still going to be Visible for, but, and we rolled it out to the sales team. And I heard the sales leader say to his team, guys, pay attention to this. This is really important data that we now have. So you know how to prioritize your leads. We're seeing which channels from marketing are working. We're seeing where sales touch points come into the play in the buyer's journey. And I think that was a key moment where I witnessed alignment in real time, is when sales and marketing finally come together to understand how we all fit into to the mix.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. All right. Well, Ragen, I know those were my big takeaways. Did you have any other ones that you wanted to share, or did we get all of yours as well?
Yeah, you got all of mine. I'm really, really happy to be here to talk more about, these amazing podcast episodes and just seeing that key theme I think that we can really focus on. And as we go into year 2025, strategic alignment is so important, and making sure that your systems are operating with the utmost data integrity. It has to happen in 2025. It's more than just having a cool attribution system. It's making sure that it fits in with the overall strategic vision and objectives of your org. It has to happen in 2025.
Love it. And I totally agree. So Ragen, thank you so much for joining. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. And I hope, because, it's December 19th, we're heading into the holiday season. So Ragen, I hope you have a fantastic holiday and a happy new year. Looking forward to talking to you in 2025.
Yeah, talk to you in 2025. Thank you for having me.